In this video, I'm going to make the argument that white people should not be adopting Native Americans. The history of the US is rife with policies that aimed at assimilating Native American populations into the mainstream American society, usually through coercive and violent means. One of the most egregious examples is the Indian boarding school system, which operated from the late 19th century into the 20th century. These schools forcibly removed Native children from their families and communities with the explicit goal of eradicating their cultural identities and assimilating them into white American society. The motto of these institutions was often summarized as "kill the Indian, save the man," a stark indication of the cultural genocide being perpetrated. Adopting Native American children into white families can be seen as a continuation of this historical trauma. Even if done with the best of intentions, it perpetuates a system that is historically aimed to dissolve Native American identities. This ongoing legacy of cultural erasure is deeply damaging to both individuals and communities, making the case against such adoptions compelling from a historical and ethical standpoint. Perhaps more importantly, culture, a fundamental aspect of identity, can be gone for Native American children when they are raised outside of their cultural environment. Being raised in a cultural environment means more than just learning about traditions and customs and rituals. It means being part of a living, breathing community that shares a common history, language, and set of values. When Native American children are adopted by white families, there's a significant risk that they will lose touch with these cultural foundations. The loss of cultural identity can lead to a range of negative outcomes. For instance, children may struggle with identity confusion, feeling caught between two worlds, but not fully belonging to either. They might experience a sense of loss and grief for the cultural connections they have been severed from. These psychological impacts can have long-term consequences on their emotional well-being and their overall sense of self-worth. The Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978, or ICWA, was established to address the disproportionately high number of Native children being removed from their homes and being placed in non-Native foster or adoptive homes. ICWA recognizes the importance of maintaining Native children within their cultural communities and sets the federal standards to protect the best interests of these children. Under ICWA, preference is given to placing Native children with their extended family members, other members of their tribe, or other Native American families. This legal framework is designed to ensure that Native children retain their cultural identity and maintain connections to their tribal communities. Adoption by white families, unless all other options have been exhausted, goes against the spirit and intent of ICWA and the principles it seeks to uphold. Transracial adoption presents unique challenges for adoptees, particularly in terms of identity formation and cultural belonging. Native American children adopted by white families may face additional layers of complexity due to the historical and cultural context of their adoption. Research has shown that transracial adoptees often struggle with identity issues, feeling like they don't belong to, again, either their birth or their adoptive culture. This can lead to a sense of isolation and confusion about their identity. For Native children, the risk of losing their cultural heritage and the lack of understanding of their unique cultural needs within white adoptive families can exacerbate these challenges, leading to long-term emotional and psychological difficulties. Native communities provide essential support networks that are tailored to the specific cultural, social, and emotional needs of their members. These communities offer not only cultural education, but also social support systems that are vital for the healthy development of children. When Native children are adopted by white families, they're often removed from these support networks. This can deprive them of the cultural and social resources that they need to thrive. Being raised in a culturally supportive environment helps children build a strong sense of identity and resilience, crucial for their overall well-being. Native tribes are sovereign nations with the right to self-determination. This includes the right to determine what is best for their children and to ensure that their cultural and familial structures are respected and maintained. By prioritizing the placement of Native children within their own communities, tribes can exercise their sovereignty and take control of their future. Adoption by white families can undermine tribal sovereignty by removing children from their cultural and community contexts. This not only weakens the social fabric of Native American communities, but also hampers their efforts to maintain and strengthen their cultural heritage for future generations. From an ethical perspective, the adoption of Native children by white families raises significant issues of social justice and equity. The historical and ongoing injustices faced by Native American communities, including the legacy of forced assimilation and cultural genocide, necessitate a careful approach to adoption. Rather than focusing on adopting Native American children into white families, efforts should be directed towards supporting Native American communities in addressing the root causes of why children might be being placed for adoption in the first place. This is really the crux of the matter. Instead of just adopting the children, think about why there are systemic issues like poverty, the lack of access to healthcare, inadequate support services, bad structural and infrastructural problems on the reservations. You can strengthen these Native communities instead, and the need for out-of-home placements will be reduced, ensuring that children can grow up within their cultural and familial contexts. Numerous case studies and anecdotal evidences highlight the negative outcomes of transracial adoptions involving Native American children. These stories often reveal the deep sense of loss and disconnection felt by adoptees who are separated from their cultural roots. Additionally, some white adoptive families may lack the understanding or commitment to provide a culturally competent upbringing, leading to further alienation and identity struggles for the adopted children. For example, in some instances, Native American adoptees have reported feeling like outsiders in their adoptive families. They cannot reconcile their cultural heritage with the expectations and norms of their adoptive environment. These experiences underscore the importance of cultural competence and the need for adoptive families to fully understand and respect the cultural background of the children that they raise. So the adoption of Native American children by white families is a complex and multifaceted issue. It requires careful consideration of historical, cultural, legal, and ethical factors. Although the intention behind such adoptions may be well-meaning, the potential negative impacts on the children and their communities cannot be overlooked. The preservation of cultural identity, the maintenance of community support networks, and the respect for tribal sovereignty are all critical considerations that argue against the adoption of Native American children by white people. Efforts should instead be focused on supporting Native American communities to address the root causes of why children might be placed for adoption and ensuring that Native American children can grow up within their cultural and familial contexts. By doing so, we can honor the rights of Native American children to maintain their cultural heritage and support the resilience and strength of Native communities. We'd be remiss to not talk about Brackeen v. Haaland, which is a significant legal case related to ICWA, addressing the placement of Native children in foster or adoptive homes. Here's a bit of an overview. Brackeen v. Haaland involves several non-Native American families who sought to adopt Native American children. These families, along with the states of Texas, Louisiana, and Indiana, thus challenged the constitutionality of ICWA, which was, to say it again, a 1978 act that set federal standards for the placement of Native American children in foster or adoptive homes, prioritizing their placement with relatives or members of the tribe. The people in Brackeen v. Haaland argued that ICWA discriminates based on race and exceeds the federal government's powers by imposing requirements on state child welfare systems. The plaintiffs in the case included Chad and Jennifer Brackeen, a Texas couple who wanted to adopt a Native American child that they had fostered, but faced challenges due to ICWA's placement preferences. These plaintiffs argue that ICWA violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment by discriminating on the basis of race. They contended that ICWA imposes different standards for the adoption of Native American children compared to non-Native children. The plaintiffs also claimed that ICWA violates the 10th Amendment by commandeering state agencies to implement federal policy, thus overstepping the powers granted to the federal government. Another argument made was that ICWA violates the non-delegation doctrine by allowing tribes to set placement preferences and intervene in state court proceedings, effectively delegating federal authority to tribal governments. The defense, which included the federal government and several tribes, argued that ICWA is not based on race, but is instead on political classification. They asserted that ICWA is designed to preserve the integrity and sovereignty of Native tribes, which are not racist, but political entities. They argued that ICWA falls within the federal government's plenary power over Native American affairs, which includes protecting the welfare of Native American children and preserving tribal culture. In 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, which has significant implications for ICWA and the rights of Native American tribes and families. To talk about that decision, we will have another video. Thank you very much.